Steve,
Hello, what's going on?
yeah, man, I'm good. How are you? I'm just lowering my thing. Long time no see, mate.
Yeah, what's going on? You okay?
Yeah, I'm all good. I'm all good. Just wow, similar to you, I'm sure. Just getting back to things after the Christmas break.
hmm
Did
Yeah,
you were you how much time off did you have, if any?
it's the first Christmas since I started the business. I had a lot of time off. Yeah, so it was
Blimey.
good. Yeah, I mean, it was a bit like a bit of a milestone for me. Do you know what I mean? Because usually over Christmas is quite busy for us. We do like gantry inspections and there's a lot of stuff going on because people are shut down. So
Yeah. Okay.
usually over Christmas
Opportunity.
always working. But yeah, now well, I've just got the staff now. At the moment. I don't really need to get involved with that now. So
How long have you been running this business?
8 years.
8 years. Wow. Yeah, man. Mate, before we jump in, like, are you did did Jen mention that just really like kind of half this conversation is just to see where you're at with things, like get some sort of feedback on things, and then
Mm,
sort of the other half is to potentially use it as a case study on the website.
mm,
Would you be okay with
mm.
that?
Yeah, yeah, no problem.
Um, because mate, I mean, firstly, I appreciate you jumping on the call and yeah, just having this catch up because when did you get involved with the program? It's probably like 6, 9 months ago, maybe 6 months ago.
Something like that. Yeah, yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Mate,
Um, sorry, mate.
no, no, Karen, I was going to listen to what you're saying.
Um, just for anyone that's like potentially watching this in the future, would you mind introducing yourself and just like explaining like what you do, what your business does?
Yeah, my name is Dean Williams. I'm a director here at Total Crane Solutions. Um, and basically, I came across your program and was looking for some more of a technical training. So where generally a lot of the engineers go out to college and they do their electrical training, uh, which is great for domestic work, but there's a whole other technical aspect on the domestic side and the industrial side, which is only really skimmed over in college. And what you'll find now in the industry in the UK is that there's a massive deficit where you've got heavy industry, you've got automation, where there's a massive deficit of engineers and lack of skill. And there's nowhere really that you can, there's programs out there that are really offering that training for people to be able to upskill, to be able to fill these positions. Um, so with my sort of searching through the internet, I've come across your program, which offers, that level of where, some automation, some PLC, understanding the schematic drawings, understanding contactor switching gears, laying out panels. These are all stuff that I luckily learned because as an apprentice, I joined a control panel building company. So I learned a lot of these skills. But then you just find as a business owner that you're sometimes don't have the time to have one-on-one training with guys constantly, and you wanted to be able to find a program that can give the guys this information. So you're covering the baseline information, so they're getting to understand what relays are, they're getting to understand the schematic side, they're getting to understand how certain things are drawn out. So then when you do come to a situation where they're having a conversation, they do have a baseline understanding, which makes the other bits where you're trying to cover technical wise with them a lot easier, rather than you're trying to teach them everything from grassroots. So most of the guys who come out of college, which I struggled with when I went to college, is that college is very focused around domestic house wiring and house bashing and stuff like that. So when I went to college, I struggled with that because I didn't do anything. I was always three phase, control panel, um, engineering, industrial, electrics and control systems. So in the second year, when I was doing a bit about motors, that's where I sort of excelled. But there was nowhere that really lays out, this is a schematic drawing, this is how the schematic drawings work, this is how you find this contact switch may be located on page 2, but the coil is laid on page 5. and this is how you find it, and this is how the drawings correlate, and this is how you go to search it, and this is how the circuits flow. There was nothing, you don't get to learn this at college. And so your course really delves into the understandings of how schematic drawings are put together, all the components, and also then touches on some PLC programming and stuff as well. So it's been good.
So you're the guys that you were taking on like and hiring then, has it always been you've been taking people on straight from college? Like how what does what does that look like for you, Dean?
Yeah, well, to be honest, I'd probably speak to maybe anybody who's listening now, who's maybe a business owner or an engineer, aspiring engineer who wants to get involved with sort of companies like ourselves. There's a massive deficit. Everybody in
Mm,
this industry is struggling to find quality engineers, and the reason is that the country hasn't really invested um, in these sectors. Britain was a massive manufacturing country, and we haven't really kept it up. So the old engineers
mm,
that were there,
yeah.
they're all retiring, and there's no young guys coming through. Well, which means there's
Yeah,
nobody
to
really there
maintain the
to have
things,
to
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 service the
maintain
things.
the
Yeah,
to
and
maintain what we've
modify.
still got in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Exactly. Do you know what I mean? So there's nobody really there maintaining. So you'll find a lot of companies who are struggling to find maintenance guys who have this particular knowledge and understanding. Do you know what I mean? So it's what we found. Um, I don't know what it is. A lot of young people are not really coming into the industry. And what we found is that we're more dealing with mature learners, people who have maybe worked in certain sectors and realised, it's not for me. I want to change in lifestyle. They've gone and done a course, and they're motivated because they've
yeah,
got families, kids, elder kids, mortgage, car, and they're not looking to mess about. And we've found a bit more success with the older learners. Would like more young people to come through, but especially where I'm from in the Midlands, we're a massive engineering area.
yeah,
Birmingham,
yeah,
Wolverhampton, Dudley, Telford, Shropshire, Staffordshire. Round here is a massive engineering sector, and there's a lot of engineers and a lot of companies that we used to be here. Um, it was the bread and butter and the go-to trade for a lot of young men, and that sort of changed over the years. And there's not the pipeline of guys who are coming into the industry, and also who, as you know, um, electrical engineering and fault finding and testing these things is a skill. There's a skill and art that you have to understand the circuits that you're working on, but also you have to be able to regurgitate a lot of this information and the understanding in your mind to be able to carry out the tests. And then this is where a lot of the guys who in my company who I'm sort of training and helping to say, look, it's not like your regular job. You can't just come in and think I'm going to do this and go away. You have to spend the time to really get the understanding of how electrical circuits works, how the drawings are written out. Because when it comes to a point where you're on a system and you're fault finding, just having the drawings in front of you doesn't work alone. You have to sort
yeah.
of be able to recreate that circuit in your mind to be able to test and follow it through. And the baseline knowledge that you give in your course, I haven't seen it anywhere else. Do you know what I mean? Um,
Well, appreciate that, mate. So how do you, for you then, like how do you go about like scaling your engineering team? How do you get new guys on board? Where do you go? Like you mentioned, like bringing mature learners in from potential other sectors. I'm interested, mate, to see what your approach is to get
Well,
people
it's
on board.
funny. It's funny. We were at our meeting today. It was at 11 o'clock, and I've just come out of an interview. And we've just literally with my office manager before jumping on this call, we were just talking about this very fact: is that um, about narrowing the pool for people that we're looking to interview. Is that we've tried to narrow our searches down and look for specific engineers in the sector, and it's just near enough impossible. Um, and then I was just sort of saying to her that, look, maybe we need to uh, put out that our criteria to state that we're looking for somebody who has understanding of three-phase control systems, But her argument was like, yeah, but then we're narrowing the pool again, and we're already struggling to find people. So what we're trying to really look for is somebody who has an aptitude, who seems to be quite switched on. We've recently employed somebody who's an ex-army guy. He used to work on tanks, but in his spare time, he used to fix PlayStations and bits and pieces.
All
So we
right.
looked at that
Yeah.
and thought, oh, look,
Yeah.
he's a thing. You know, what you tend to find is that with good electrical guys, tend to be tinkerers. People like to, well, how's that work? Take it apart, let me
Yeah.
see. And we thought, well, let's give it a try. And to be honest, touch wood from now, he's been fantastic. The team absolutely love him. He's showing a great aptitude, and certain things I'm explaining to him, he's picking up really quick because he's already wired that way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you tend to find the electricians that their brains work a little different way. You know, there's certain to be a certain aptitude to it. Do you know what I mean? And
So
again, if you haven't got that, you've got to be prepared to put the time in to be able
yeah,
to wire your brain to get it to think like that.
because this is the thing, man. Like, and because I know as well as you do, like the pool of good engineers is small, and yeah, it's just really difficult for business owners to find good people. So like, I don't know what your opinion is on this, but people that say are interested in getting into the industry, like potentially coming to work for you, and let's say that they haven't necessarily got previous time served experience in controls automation, like is that because this is what I see on job descriptions, a lot of job descriptions out there, it's like, oh, you need 2 years time served experience or 5 years experience. What's your take on that? Like, would you still consider take someone on that hasn't got, previous time served experience in controls and
It,
automation?
it, it all depends again, is how that person comes across. A lot of times, some of their personal interests is an indication to what type of person they are. Do you know what I mean? Like say the guy we've just taken on, he mentioned that, in the spare time, I fix PlayStation, I fix, games consoles
Yeah,
and bits. And
yeah,
so straight away, for me, that's okay. He's a tinkerer. He's got an aptitude to go and find an issue. You know what I mean? Repair stuff. People like to repair stuff. Again, maybe somebody does vehicle automotives. I'll fix the car and there's something wrong with the electrics, and these tinkerers, they seem to have the
yeah,
aptitude to be able to solve and figure out issues because again, when it comes to it's okay. How can I explain it? When I was an apprentice, I was wiring panels and I was great, superb, fantastic at wiring panels. I could wire them all up. But I was sent to site one day to do a start stop circuit, and it took me all day to wire it. And what I realised is that if I've got the drawings in front of me, I can wire for wire. But what I
yeah,
realised is I didn't understand how it
yeah,
actually worked. And from when I figured it out that day, that was it. My electrical knowledge just took off because then I
yeah,
started to realise it's not just one taking what 315 to the
yeah.
coil of KM1
That's like
and
painting by numbers. Like anyone can do
yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah. Do you know what I mean? But it's understanding, and what I'd say is, if you've got that aptitude, maybe sign up to a course like this and spend the time to to fortify your knowledge and understanding. So when you do come to somebody like myself, who's
Mm.
a director of a company who's looking for these skill sets, we're gonna snap you up because you're thinking, all right, you're not fully there, but you've got enough baseline knowledge that I can teach you the rest. Do you know what I mean? But when you're coming in, like we've had a couple of guys with Sparkies, and I've got a control board, which is like a sort of a mimic of a control system of
Like
a
a rig or
crane, and
something.
yeah, and I've got one just sitting in our boardroom, and I've just got sitting in the corner, and I say to them, okay, can you identify the components on there? And the only thing the electricians identify is a circuit breaker. Everything else they haven't got a clue,
Yeah,
and this is a problem. So then, if you don't know what a transformer is, if you don't know what a contactor is, you don't know what a relay is, you're not sure what a PLC is, you're not sure what an inverter drive is. It's that learning curve. Is like how much time have I got to invest in you for
yeah,
you to understand all these components, but with your course, you're introducing people to these concepts, you're introducing to them how they work, you're breaking down how these components work in a circuit and how they interact and how to wire them up. Um, and it gives us as an employer, it lightens the burden for us to be able
mm.
to capitalize on what their baseline knowledge is.
And also it's like fair enough if someone hasn't got all everything that they need. Like you can bridge like say they're 50% of the way there, you can bridge the other 50%. But it's
Yeah.
like if they come to you applying for a position, they know that you've a big focus for you guys is control panels, is
Mm,
controls, and they don't even know, you know, like a PLC or the basics of a relay. It's like you kind of think as a
mm,
like me thinking as a business owner, you're like, well, look, man. I mean, if you don't really know what PLC is, how that works on a basic level, and how a relay works on a
level.
basic, you're like, do I want to invest my time into bringing this person up that other 50%
Mm,
when there might be another person that they're competing against that's
mm,
also coming to you that's got a
yeah.
higher level there?
Mm. And what you're saying there as well is 100% correct. Is what I'd say is for those people who are looking for the positions, I'll give you an insight just on the other side as an employer. When we
Yeah,
see somebody across the way from us, we're looking for somebody who's potentially going to be able to come into the business and fill a deficit and help us move the business forward. But also, we're looking at across the table as that you are a liability. Do you know what I mean? Because it costs us to employ people, and especially now
yeah,
how the government put up the minimum wage and all the costs around business, a lot of business are shedding people because they can't afford to keep because the cost of employing people is so
yeah,
high. You know, everyone's trying to cut. So if you really want to get yourself into this sector, doing stuff like this is really going to put you ahead of the pack. And also, as well, like you just said, you know, baseline understanding of the PLC. What I've started to realize is that you know the really good engineers are wired a certain way, and some people just can't get it. They're just not built like that. Do you know what I mean? They just can't figure out. But if you've already come into me and you say, "Yeah, I understand what a PLC," I'm already thinking, okay, you're already in that realm. You already started to understand. You understand what you're talking about. So, but somebody who doesn't, you're taking the chances of are they wired that way or they're not. You're not
yeah.
showing me anything, and it's
It's
a bit of a
risky.
gamble. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a gamble. Do you know what I mean? So if I like we've got 3 interviews today, you know, we've been
I
through the
feel,
first one. So if a guy comes into me and goes, oh yeah, no PLCs, oh, well, we've worked on a couple of drives, we had them on some conveyor systems, and a guy coming in who can only identify a breaker. At that point, you're going to be like, who are you going to go with? You know, he seems to know a little
yeah.
bit more about this stuff. Do you know what I mean? So
It's
again,
like put. Go on, mate. Sorry.
yeah, it's just investing. And again, like what
Yeah,
happens with you guys is that you're introducing these concepts, you're introducing, you know, even to the point where, you know, laying out a panel, well, we've got to build a little panel for this conveyor system or for this thing. And you've shown people how to lay out a panel, how to put the trunking in, you know, so oh, go on that. You've got to, you're exposed to it. Do you know what I mean? And, you know, I was very fortunate that I got an apprenticeship with a company that does control panel building. Do you know what I mean? And when I left there, you know, it's just a job, isn't it? You know, a job apprentice. You go, you know, I was there for 8 years, and you know, you want to get more money. They don't want to pay you, so you end up leaving. And you're
yeah,
thinking, oh, and it isn't until you get out in the real world, out of that bubble of apprentices and that company, your first job, that you go into the world and you start to do stuff, and people are like, you know, you're good, and you're thinking,
mm.
what's your standard? Do you know what I mean? You start to realize, oh, not everybody has been exposed to the stuff that you've been exposed to. Do you know what I mean? And
But there's that like people say, oh, there's no good engineers. Like there's no engineers at all, but there's certainly very few like really good engineers, and it's like because I think just a lot of people just don't care enough. They're not interested enough. They
yeah,
don't
yeah,
like is if you care enough and you're interested enough, you're naturally just gonna be curious to go down that rabbit hole, to pull that thread, you know?
yeah, and exactly, and you know, I had it with a couple of our lads here, and I said to them, you know, like what I've said to you short previously, it's not a job, it's a lifestyle. Engineering is not a job because you know my missus was laughing up. We've got a mate, he's got a fabrication company, and my missus and his missus were laughing at us because we went away with the kids to Butlins, and we were looking at the canopy, and we was looking, oh bloody hell, how have
Yeah,
they welded that? Do you know what I mean? Because it's just how you,
yeah,
when you were getting into engineering, and this is how you look at stuff, and you started to break it down. How was that put together? How was that structured? It's a mindset and a lifestyle, and once you start to think in this process analytically and starting to break circuits down and start to fault find, you start to think about this in every facet
Yeah.
of your life. Do you know what I mean? It's not.
But but as a business owner, like you know that you are that type
Yeah.
of person, as you wouldn't have gone into
Mm,
business like you. And if you it's so easy to identify other people that are similar from just having a
mhm,
conversation like we're having now. Like
mm,
I know you're on the same level as me when it comes to like, interest in engineering.
yeah.
And if you can, if I see that speaking to someone else, like I'm sure same with you, speaking to like an employee who's someone who's interested in, helping your business grow ultimately, but working with you, working for you, like it's easy to recognize these types of people. And like
Mhm,
those are the people that make really good engineers that offer
mhm,
huge amounts of value to business owners like yourself. And then it's just a no-brainer. Those are the types of people that you want working for you. And to retain decent people like that, like you're going to naturally give them more opportunity, more responsibility, let them grow within the business. They're going to
yeah.
get paid more because they're
Mhm,
offering more value. So it's like
yeah.
the more curious you are, the more interested you are in this subject, you're naturally going to develop yourself, which is then in turn going to benefit a business owner like yourself, which is then
Mhm.
going to benefit you. It's just, it's a,
You've got to take your personal development serious in this field. It's not something. Don't get me wrong. You can go to work and just do the job and pick it up bit by bit, but it's going to be a long, tedious process. This is something that you'll find that in engineering. I was kind of lucky because the time I came into it, there was still a lot of the big engineering machine shops around, and they were just sort of closing them down towards when I first got my apprenticeship. So I got to meet a lot of these big engineering shops where there were fitters, there were hydraulics guys, there were electrical guys. Do you know what I mean? There was,
mm,
now it's more of a
yeah,
multi-skilled trade
yeah,
now. Before it was segregated. And what you tend to find, a lot of these guys, what do you do after work? They've got machine shops in their garage. This is they're coming to work, but they're going home doing the same thing. I mean, this is their hobby, it's their life. You know what I mean?
yeah,
They live, breathe, and sleep it. Do you know what I mean? It's everything. But what I'd say again, like I said, with a course like yourself, you you've got to really spend that time to bridge that knowledge gap. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
And again, being curious. With this job, it's always, you know you've got to be willing to, dig deep. Well, why is that happening? Or why did that
mm,
happen? What is the root cause? Where is that coming from? And being curious and keep digging. Um, but yeah, I think the stuff you've produced. I said to you when I rang you up, I said, I haven't seen anything like this. Do you know what I mean? Everything I've learned. This is the first time I've seen somebody showing me everything that I know, in a sense. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
in
yeah,
a course contract. Do you know what I mean? So when, like, I've had lads where I'm building a panel and I'm wiring up. I've got no drawings. I'm just wiring up. And how do you know that? And I'm like, well, I understand the circuit, so I know what's got to be what. And I mean, it's difficult, and you're
it's
trying
hard
to
to
explain.
explain.
It's hard
It's
to explain things.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? And you've done fantastic to be able to compress that knowledge you've got, and deliver it in a course of content and a platform that, people can digest and revisit again. Because a lot of times, you know I'm trying to teach people while the phone's going. I've got this doing, I've got this, do
yeah,
you know what I mean? And
yeah.
sometimes it can not be the best environment for me to be able to teach people. But what makes it easier is that if you're coming to me with a baseline understanding, I've only got to fill in the gaps. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because what's going to happen is, what I find is, when you haven't got a baseline understanding, you're looking at me with like a deer in headlights. Because when I start speaking, you don't understand anything. So I've now got to explain, you know,
taking it right back to
yeah,
basics,
back,
like first principles almost, and then you're like,
contact,
how much time is it going to take for me to?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And even just like sometimes trying to explain to somebody how a contactor works, like and they're looking at it, well, you've got 450 volts going through the contactor, but the control voltage is 110 or 48 or 24. And how's that? And it's like, yeah, there's a transformer, there's mains voltage,
Yeah.
and just, but if they already understand that, and he's like, well, I've got it wired, but it doesn't work. And the latch, yeah, because you got the latching circuit in the wrong position. This is the
Mm.
reason, I haven't, when I'm talking, they're already engaged to a point where
Yeah.
they can understand the wiring element that I'm trying to explain to them, rather than them looking at it at the component thinking, I don't even, it's an alien to me. I don't get it.
Going back to like what we were saying earlier, taking wire 351 to
Yeah,
like, point 29 on the like that's not helpful in this scenario, is it?
yeah, yeah. No, yeah. It doesn't mean anything to them. Do you know what I mean?
No,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
the deeper understanding of
yeah.
that that's
But again,
helpful.
like I said, I've had discussions with the guys, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I am," and I'm like, "I've been in this game nearly 30 odd years now. I know if you're doing work at home or not, because the level of questions you're going to ask me.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you know what
That's
I mean?
such a good
When you
indicator, isn't
Do you know
it?
what I mean? So the questions
Yeah,
that you start asking me will tell me
yeah,
the level of understanding that you have.
yeah,
And
yeah,
if you're not doing the work at home, you're not gonna. I know you're gonna get to a point where you're gonna get stuck, and
yeah.
you're gonna need to ask me a question. Well, I've got to this and I don't understand. Straight away, I know. Okay, you're looking at stuff now, and we can start getting into it.
And it's the same in an interview process. You're trying to assess where they're at. So you're
Hmm.
asking them questions or asking them to explain something, and you're looking at where they're at and how their mind works. Like if say you create some sort of like, oh, there's a fault scenario, how do you isolate that fault? How do you get to that fault? And you're looking
Hmm.
at like how
Hmm.
they break it down, how they think.
Hmm.
That's kind of what you're looking at to gauge their understanding, their level, like as an employer or someone who's bringing someone onto the team. So I think for people that are looking to move into this industry and join a business like yours, it's like I think it's really helpful for those sort of people to understand what employers
You're looking
are
for.
looking for ultimately, yeah,
Yeah,
in
yeah,
that person,
100%.
because then they can optimize for that, which is better for them, which is better for you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. One thing is, at the end of the day, look, it's there's a massive demand in this country for this type of skill. Do you know what I mean? You've just got to set yourself above everybody else, because at the end of the day, the liabilities that you have to take on of employing people in this sector is not like you can just take in anybody. So businesses are
Mm,
suffering, businesses are turning down work, because it's not like you can just take anybody, because you get it wrong, you're not going home. Do you know what I mean? Especially in our sector, we're dealing with high voltage, we're working at heights. Do you know what I mean? If you don't have the right aptitude, you don't have the right skill set, you don't have the right uh, drive and focus and attitude to health and safety,
mm,
you won't go home. You know,
yeah.
you're not going home
How?
to your wife and kids.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Which is serious stuff. How are you doing for
Yeah,
time, mate?
yeah, I'm fine. I'm good.
I just wanted to ask you, like, just piggybacking on the thing that you mentioned just before that, like, how are you using the program then in terms of like how are you as a business owner using the program at the moment and in the
So,
future?
so, so what I've done basically, I've got it set up in the computer in our boardroom. Um, and one of the guys have just gone in there basically and going through the program, and I'm going through with him, and obviously as you're explaining certain things, breaking bits and pieces down. And what we've used it for as a tool is as a baseline understanding. This is where I think is a massive help for me. So if I was to say to somebody who's potentially looking at this course um, online, and who's looking to have a change in career, or as a young guy in college is looking to get into this type of field, I'd use this course as the bridge of knowledge. Do you know what I mean? To gap, because you've only got to go on the internet and have a look who's producing content around this type of sector. Nothing. Do you know what I mean?
Mm,
I haven't. I found you, and that was really it. And we spoke about this. Do you know what I mean? So unless you can get into a job where you're going to be apprentice and you're going to be around a company who's going to show you how to panel build and all this, if you can't get that job, you're not gonna get in. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
if you just spend your money, get on this course, and really dedicate yourself and bridge that knowledge, when you sit in an interview and you're saying, "Yeah, I understand what a PLC is, I understand that what that is, a transformer, is a breaker, the control circuit," somebody sitting there as an employee going, "All right, you haven't got the experience in the job, but the understanding of the
mm,
components and the switching
yeah,
that you understand, I can take you." Do you know what I mean? I can
yeah.
take you, and I can
You
mold
can
you.
work with that.
And
Yeah,
and again, what you have to remember is that as an employer, you're as an unexperienced electrician or candidate, you're a liability for a company, because a lot of
yeah,
times they're paying you for stuff that they can't make money. You're not profitable at that point,
yeah,
because
yeah, yeah,
your competency is not there. They have to invest
yeah.
more time into you
Hmm.
before they can put you on a job and start to generate a profit off your labor.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. It's the time thing. Like and it's a cliche, time is money.
Mhm,
But if they're not producing because you're
mhm,
getting them up to speed, that's a
mhm.
cost to a business.
Mm, yeah,
And I
but I
think,
think it's good with your courses, it's the under. This is what people don't understand. It's the understanding. So people say, "Oh, the experience." It's not really the experience. What the company's looking, what a director's looking for is that, do you have the right attitude to be able to pick this up in a short space of time? Because if it's going to take you 12 months to pick this up, you're going to cost me 12 months, and
yeah,
you may not get it. And then I've spent 12 months invested in you, and I'm not seeing no rewards. Or if somebody who's come in, who's done this course and has a really good understanding, but just hasn't has the physical um, hands-on skills in the job, but you've got a great understanding. When somebody shows you something, you're gonna get it. Oh, I just need to see it. I just need to get it. Oh, he's showing me now, but I understand what you're saying because I've seen that. Oh yeah. Oh, that's that. Yeah, yeah, cool. Okay, no problem.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? All of a sudden, you're up and running in 3 months, and then
yeah,
also you can go back in and say, right, okay, I've picked this up. I've kept to my word. I want to increase my wages.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And again, in this industry, they're going to say, no problem. Here's what you want. Take it. Because it's so difficult to find people with the right attitude. So
yeah.
it's
Yeah, it's because some of the people that I speak to, they're like, "Oh, do you do like hands-on stuff?" I'm like, "Well, it's not hands-on practical. Like this is online. It's an online program. But like if you're from an engineering background, electrician, that kind of you've got all the hands-on. Like you know how
mhm.
to screw in a bit of DIN rail to a terminal to a backplate. You know how to take a wire from A to B. Like the practical is not what you need. Like you've got that if you're, half decent an
well,
engineer. It's
well,
the
well, let's put it
knowledge
this
and
way.
understanding.
Well, let's put it this way. You can go down to your local wholesalers, like for us, it's Lockwell's, RS. Do you know what I mean? Different places. You can go and pick up an enclosure. You don't even need to just get a piece of scrap metal. You can go pick up some DIN rail, some contactors, some cable. You can get a transformer which can plug into your 240-volt supply, and you can go and wire all these things up and test it and start to play around with these. Go and buy a bulb. Do you know what I mean? Go and buy
Yeah.
a 24-volt DC power supply. For probably about, say, 200-300 quid, you could
Mm,
have all this equipment in your house, and you could be playing with it on the night,
yeah.
sharpening your skills, sharpening your understanding. What the problem is a lot of people want, as we in society, is they want the pill version. They want a pill to cure everything. They want a quick solution. Oh, can you just give me this? And
Yeah.
I'll no, you've got to invest in yourself. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And again, what we've done with this course, is we invested, and it's made a massive difference.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that, mate. I remember you were a little bit we had that first conversation. You were a little bit
Of
hesitant, weren't
course,
you?
yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Do you know what I
Why were
mean?
you
Like I said to
hesitant?
you, because again, like I said, I'm not coming from a point where um, I don't I don't understand the stuff that you teach. I'm an electrical engineer. I've been doing this for how many years, so I kind of know the level of knowledge what I was looking for. So because I haven't seen it, I'm kind of like,
Yeah.
oh, well, how's it? How is he gonna deliver all this? Do you know what I mean? How is this gonna play out? So I'm just like, are people gonna really take to it? But again, if you've got the desire and will, and you really want to get into this sector, you really want to, you know, mark yourself out from the competition. You've got to invest in your personal development. Do you know what I mean? And taking that time and wanting to, like I said, a lot of people go out and go buy, designer clothes and trainers and stuff, and
Yeah.
but you ask them to go down the wholesalers and spend 300 quid to buy this equipment to, tinker about in the night to get a better understanding. They're looking at you strange. Do you know what I mean? But this
Yeah.
can be the thing that can open a lot of doors for you. Do you know what I mean?
This
And
is
I'm
like
talking
like it's a life-changing skill.
100%. I didn't
Yeah.
realize this as an apprentice until I left
No.
and I moved area and I started to, bounce around a little bit. And, people are looking at you like, how do you, we've been looking for a guy. This has been broken
Yeah.
down for 2 weeks, and you like it simple, like the
Yeah.
relay's burnt, the relay's burnt out, and you change up, blood hell. And it's like, oh yeah, you start to realize, oh, there's a massive difference from a domestic electrician to a controls engineer. Do you know what I
Mm.
mean? There's a you meet a domestic electrician, he's turning up with his two-prong meter, and you're like, no, you need a multimeter because you need to be able to test all the different voltages, and
Mm.
you need to know
Mm.
if there's voltage drop, because you might have a voltage there, but if it's a 110-volt transformer and something's dragging it down, you're not going to see the voltage discrepancy. You need to be able to see
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
There's a number of things. So you're giving people an introduction into stuff that you would only have if you was employed by a controls engineers company. Do you know what I mean? There's no other content out there that you're gonna really see breaking it down. You know what I mean? I didn't go to college and someone teaching how to lay out a control panel and put DC drives on there and chokes and contactors and terminals and wire it all up. There's no college that taught you that. I had to be taught by the company I was employed by. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you I say roll on, 30 years later, you know, I bump into your stuff and I'm going, okay, uh, there's somebody who's actually teaching people this. You know, so,
I'm really interested though, mate, because and I want to dive into this a little bit further because and this is the I it's totally fair enough, and it's because I experience this quite a lot, but naturally there's hesitancy before moving forward with an online program like this because I know it's
mm,
a relatively new concept in our industry, you know, and like you mentioned, there's no one doing sort of what I'm doing in the industry, so it's quite a new thing, and people were, I suppose it's a risk ultimately. Like, so I'm just interested, like, to understand like where your mind was at back when we had the first conversation. You were a little bit hesitant about moving forward with it initially. Like, where
mm.
was your thinking? What?
Well, again, obviously, it's a significant investment.
Yeah,
The course is not cheap, but again, the amount of time and labor you've put in to generate that content, you got to be compensated because you spend a lot of time breaking things down and getting the material to deliver it. So I was skeptical because I was like, I know what I wanted from it, and I
yeah,
was like, oh, I don't know. And again, there's a lot of people out there who jump on YouTube and give their things, and it's crap. So you're always gonna have a skeptical. I don't know. You're offering something. Let's see. Do you know what I mean? But opening it up and seeing it, and showing the guys what I've brought, and they have to look at it, and everybody's eyes are like, oh, yeah, it's pretty good. Do you know what I mean? And you're breaking it down and you show it. You got all this, especially with the schematics. This is where the issue is like, this is what separated me from a lot of people, is that some people could fix electrical issues, but if you got too technical and you gave them a set of drawings, they didn't know how to navigate it. They couldn't
mm,
navigate drawings. But I spent 8 years building panels, and everything I did every day was in a set of electrical drawings. you know, Going from page to page, wiring up. wiring up the DC drives, wiring up all the inverters, the relays, contactors. So every day I'm opening up a set of electrical drawings, navigating them to wire up these panels. So for me to pick up a set of drawings is like reading the book. You know? Yeah. So
If if you had to choose like one thing like within the program, mate, like what would you say that helped you the most, or has helped the business the most, helped your guys the most? What would that be?
I think it's the schematics. Do you know what I mean? It's that you've got the components and the control systems and the wiring, but it's the schematics of how it's laid out and how things go together, and they can see that. Do you know what I mean? Um, because I challenge you to go up to any college course up and down the country and see if you can find that information. Someone's going to teach you that.
Hmm.
I've not met anybody who's come out of college who, do you know what I mean? Who's getting that information? Who's they're showing you how to read the electrical schematics side on the control side. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, you can get the domestic wiring drawings and bits and pieces, and how to
Hmm.
wire up a house, but everything's really tailored around house bashing. Year two, you get into a little bit of motors and DC and bits and pieces, but when you're talking about control systems, you know, you know, if that was the case, then why we have a shortage of this skill set in the
Yeah.
UK? Because
Yeah.
it's not being taught. It's not something that you have to get into a company to acquire this knowledge. Do you know what I mean? So
Hmm.
again, what I'd say, this course doesn't give you the practical aspects, but this will definitely give you the edge over any other candidate that if you're going to apply for a job to get into the sector, that you're going to be able to get through the door. Do you know what I mean?
In terms of like
Um,
knowledge, understanding.
knowledge and understanding, because again, once you have an understanding of something, so if I understand the practicality of, if I watched a video of how to dismantle a Tesla and put bits of these together and put it all back together, I may never touch a Tesla, but when I get into a garage and the guy's taking out the engine, I've already seen what's going on and
Yeah.
what's what. So when he's
It's a
going,
good
oh yeah,
analogy.
no, oh, just watch that, watch that bolt over there. You got to, how do you know that? Oh, 'cause I've seen the video and I
Hmm.
understand. So because I'm not seeing something for the first time now, and I've got a general understanding, I can ask more of a deeper question, because I'm not just sitting there thinking, oh, what's this or what's that? And I've already seen it. So now I can ask more meaningful questions on the intricacy of how it works. You know what I mean? Rather than be in awe of, oh, what's this, and not understanding. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It makes sense. That was a really good analogy as well. If you had to just like anyone that's potentially watching this video in the future that's on the fence about joining the program, like what would you say to them? Whether it's a business owner or an employee.
Um, to be honest, what I would say to them is that it's the key that really is what we've been looking for in the industry. Again, the with Zoom and the internet, we're revolutionizing the way we can disseminate information. And I think you're probably the first person in our field who's capitalized on this and is actually opening the doors for people to get into this industry. But like I said, unless you've come from a controlled background and with a company, you're not going to be able to get into this field. You're not going to be able to get into this industry. You know what I mean? Somebody's
Mm,
got to be able to take a chance on you and walk you through the door, and you get the experience that way. But it's not like like I said, if there was a massive, if this information was widely available throughout the colleges up and down the country, then we wouldn't have the problem that we've got, because there'll be loads of
mm,
people coming out of these courses, walking straight into these jobs with a great understanding and can be employed. But it's very different from the skill sets that's required in general domestic house wiring. This is control wiring, and
yeah,
there's other voltages involved, other systems, integration with hydraulics, pneumatic. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of other things you need to be aware of that it controls, because these control systems are controlling other elements. Do you know what I mean? Through ventilation, say pneumatic, hydraulics. motors, you know, your systems are controlling all these bits. And what you do is give people a general all-round knowledge of these industries and what these applications can control. So what I'd say to people who maybe be skeptical, go and jump on the internet and see if you can find who's going to be else is going to give you this information, because I've looked and there's nobody. You know, there's not a college up and down the country that's going to be able to give you this, unless you've got a lecturer who's willing to do some time on the side of you, who's worked in this industry, who's going to be able to, but
Mm,
he's not going to have a course content. He's not going to have a
mm,
course structure. It's just going to be things that he's going to be able to show you. But even then, at that point, he's going to only be teaching you the baseline knowledge. You've got to have to explain to you what a contactor is. You have to explain to you what a relay is. You know, and then even stuff when you come down to solid state relays and PLCs
mm,
and how an inverter works, and he's going to have to explain all this to you before you even get to the point where he's he's even can explain to you how to wire these things in together to get them to work.
yeah,
You know, so
yeah,
again, if you want to develop your skill set and move on, this is a great way of being able to take this information at your own leisure, but you've got to do the work. You've
yeah,
got to do the work. It's not this is not an industry where, you know, you turn up at Asda, stack a couple of shelves and go home and switch off. You have to
mm,
go and do work at home. You have to, and if you've already put the work in to do your electrical course, you know the amount of work that it takes behind the scenes to be able to pass those tests and to go and get your gold card. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
this is another course that you put the time in, you'll definitely reap the rewards, because there's a number of employers up and down the country like me who are looking for people with this particular skill set.
Well, I appreciate that, mate, and I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation with me, Dean. So thank you. Stay on the line, mate, and
Mhm.
I'll end the video here. But thank you, mate.